Make my own rules, play my own games. I don't give a what you
Hi, I'm Ray,
And I'm Steph,
and this is the SciComm Hotline.
where we gossip about all the cringe and exciting ways science is communicated in real life.
So let's bring the drama.
wild and free.
Hi!
Hi, Ray. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Do you want to hear about the newest thing that I've learned yesterday, which I thought is very connected to our podcast?
Please.
Do you know what PMO means?
Piss me off.
I didn't know that. How does everyone know it?
It took me a while to figure out because, like, especially like reading people's comments all the time, I'm like, like FTW, PMO, like IMO, like there's always like so many shorthands. And I'm like, after a few comments, then I can kind of like
Right.
figure out. But it took me a while to figure that one out too.
Right. I was overhearing these girls just like talking. She was like, yeah, and this girl like really PMO'd me. And I look at Michael and I'm like, project management office?
Yeah, yeah.
He's like,
PIO,
"Piss
like,
me off."
yeah, that's hilarious that they're using that, like, instead of saying the whole thing, they're abbreviating it
Right,
themselves.
right. So speaking of, do you have a PMO this week?
Mine would be okay, yeah, personal, professional. I guess personal and professional
Mm,
would be, yeah, like applying for jobs. And
yes.
the stages of grief you go through after a job interview. So I felt pretty confident. I used some of my SciComm knowledge for like this position to like, validate or give them reasoning like why I'm an expert and like a suitable candidate for this
Mhm.
position. But then like once the interview is done, like immediately after an interview is done, I go to the phase of like I blacked out. I have no idea what I just said. And then like couple more hours later, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to remember the questions that they asked
Right.
and then trying to remember what I answered. And then it's like midnight, I'm in bed trying to sleep, then eyes just wide open of just like, "Ah, I shouldn't have said that," or "I should have said this." And I'm just like thinking about like all the things I could have said and that made me sound like better answers for what they were asking for. And then now I just have to grieve of just like, okay, now I just have to like tuck that experience away and just wait to either hear back or move on with either other jobs or other perspectives. And so
Right.
that's what I hate right now is having to apply for jobs because of all the budget cuts. Science is
Mhm.
really the first to go.
I
And
know.
so we out here experiencing that.
That really sucks, man. That really sucks. I hope you not only move to acceptance quick, but also you and your new colleagues could laugh about it later. Like, "Oh, do you remember about this interview?"
How silly was that answer? Did that
Silly.
make me authentic or incompetent?
Right. Because we were talking about like, yeah, once you are in interviews and you worry about like, am I not perfect? Is that necessarily a bad thing or like bring some a little bit of like your like humanity? Like no one wants to see like a perfect person. And I wonder how that is different in job interviews. But in the same vein, my personal professional hate was I think the feeling that like really hit me this week, it was like a very not good eventful week where just like everything kind of came together where I got COVID. I've been thinking more about this, my layoffs and stuff, and just everything going on, the news. And I thought of a friend of us also posted on her story, I just want to do impactful research. And I thought, I just want to do work. I just want to do good work. I want to be creative. I want to train people. I want to learn in the process. And it's like one of those times where like your imposter syndrome actually like really goes away. You're like, I'm good. I'm good at what I'm doing. And I just want to do that.
Yeah.
And with like all the cuts, everything, it just feels like, yeah, it's hard. It's hard and it hurts. And I hate that feeling of it's like stinking water when it's stale.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Looks like flies just buzzing all over
I
it.
know. I know.
Uh, and like I think I don't know if I talked about this. I feel like I repeated this for a lot of friends that I've been talking to about all this as well of just if we are pursuing a PhD, we're technically like high achieving type of people and that we tie our identities to like the work that we do. And the
Mm.
fact that like we see science communication as something valuable. We've been validated in many instances because we've been hired to do science communication trainings, go to workshops, get some fellowships with congratulations, right? We can talk about that later too.
Linguist.
We've had success in like earning things because of our ideas and our training and our knowledge in the science of science communication. But then when like budget cuts hit and we're like the first to go, then it's just like, okay, so then am I not valued? Is this not valued? Like, why does it feel such a personal hit when at the end of the day, it's not always personal to us and our ability to do these things, but it just sucks that it freaking feels like that.
I know, just looking at like all the data visualizations of like science education budget being like such a big cut,
Mhm.
it hurts, especially when you think like, oh, like I thought after COVID, like people would just like invest like crazy in science education, science communication and everything. So seeing those numbers and then seeing it like in everyone around you, like literally everyone around you in that field, yeah, it hurts. It
Yeah,
hurts.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because like, we're saying this is a communication problem, or other people in our field are saying this is a communication problem. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, that's not being reflected into like what we're validating, prioritizing, and then that also hurts how we do science in the end because of our lack of transparency and communication and whatnot. So like, what are we doing about it? How do we ideate on like what are things we can control? And not much at this point, but we are going to gossip.
We are. Give me the gossip stuff. What's
Uh,
new? What messages, emails, stuff you've seen? Tell me what I should be mad about.
That was a horrible segue, but also, this brings us joy into not you being a horrible segue, but my horrible segue into setting you up to talk about the thing to segue correctly.
Right.
But we finally got some submissions to our SciComm hotline. Super exciting. So this person is a very, yeah, like a well-respected colleague in the science communication space. They sent 3 ideas essentially that they've been
Mhm.
talking about amongst their peer groups. But one of them stood out to me, which I think is gonna be the theme of this topic, which is about plagiarizing.
Okay.
Plagiarizing, and we'll later talk about intellectual humility. But for now, this is what they wrote. They start off with, "This is what I've been yelling about in my group chats lately. A researcher plagiarized text I wrote in the broader impact section of a grant they reviewed in the process of trying to book me to do a similar job for them."
Wait, so they were, like, writing a grant, and this person just, like, took what they said in that process and put it in their grant with no
So,
crediting?
I think I'm under the impression that they wrote a broader impact section for another scientist,
Uh-huh,
and then this other person is a reviewer,
uh-huh.
read the broader impacts, plagiarized that during the same time that or they're courting her to hire her to work for them to do a similar job that's listed in this broader impacts.
Oh my god. That is it's also, like, so you're like, "I have evidence that this is my work." It's not even like it didn't come up in a conversation and you stole it. It's like, "Oh, no.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
oh."
So that's pretty grimy.
You
Um,
know, I actually had something similar kinda happen to me.
tell me, tell me, tell
It
me.
didn't it didn't eventually, like, properly happen, but mine was, like, more I had a conversation, with this person about, like we ended up working on something together, and then I had this, like, idea. I was like, "By the way, like, I have this, like, idea," explained it, like, all and everything, and I was like, "Maybe, like, we could work together and apply for funding." Um, and then something happened, I got busy, and then he reached out, and he said, "Oh, I was thinking of this idea and I'm gonna apply for this for funding." So it wasn't plagiarism per se. It was more like this idea is here and now but like it felt like he's saying like I'm going to apply for this. Would you like to do this with me? And I was like, "Sir."
This was
Actually,
originally
he's
my
also
idea that I proposed to you.
I
Yeah.
know. And like we're all in the same community, so I have to like still kind of be like polite and everything. So it's kind of like, "Hey, I don't have like the capacity for it and everything. Like, can we put a pin in this and come back to it? And this was like 3, 4 years later. And I did this project eventually, like with actually SciComm Lab, which we both are like fans of. But just like the audacity to be like, hey, I'm gonna like, dude, come
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah.
I was
Yeah,
like,
like, just also presenting it to you as if it was, like, a new idea that they just came up with, that they're
right,
just gonna
right,
roll
right,
with, when it's just like, "No, we had this discussion where we're supposed to do
right.
this,"
I'm
and
really curious to know how that situation went with
I
that
know.
friend.
I know, they didn't share more. I wish I can yeah, maybe we can ask her later to see if she can, like, maybe next episode, like, share a little
Yeah,
bit more context. She shared
right.
context with, like, some other idea things that she's been yelling about in the group chat, but I think that's gonna be for another conversation, but watching that get plagiarized, like, this is not new, at least in the scientific space. Like,
Mhm,
where and especially also in, like, the science communication space as well. It reminded me of 2 other friends that are independent science communicators that are in, like, using social media and YouTube, that experienced something similar. So, let's show you. One was Lab Muffin, like, she debunks a lot of beauty science on social
mhm,
media, like, as a
mhm,
chemist, but also with, like, more background in, like, cosmetic science.
mhm,
She believes, in her opinion, that another creator who is a male doctor with over like 1 million TikTok followers, so a larger following than her, plagiarized her content. And so, like, she posted a video. It's almost word for word. It's like, how when you copy, like, you know, I've cheated a couple of times and, like, on, like, homework assignments and stuff, but you're like, "Don't make it exactly the same," so you just start changing, like, words around or, like, expanding or fluffing it around to make it sound like it's, like, original, even though it's, like, so this is essentially what has happened. So, this is one example that she posted. So, it's a video, I think, about, like, leaving sunscreen out in the heat. So, she's, like, questioning, like,
uh-huh,
the rigidity of this research article that's, like, publishing
right,
how this certain acne treatment is, like, toxic or if you leave in the sun and blah, blah, blah. So
mhm.
then a day later, this MD content creator
Oh,
posts post a video with almost the same verbiage. So it's like
oh boy.
so it's like not word for word, but it's almost like we're saying,
Right,
like, you're expanding it, you're changing, you're
right.
massaging it to make it sound like your own words. But I'm like,
Wow.
but then it makes me think of, like, the culture that we have in science, which is like the publish or perish kind of thing, where sometimes we can be some scientists are dinged for, like, plagiarizing themselves. When it's just like there's only so many ways you can talk about this one thing, and especially
Mhm,
um, if we're using the same knowledge and same citations to, like, talk about this story, like, there's only so many ways to, like, talk about this story. So I'm like, we even see it in, like, how press releases are published or, like, how news or, like, organizations talk about, like, science things, like, it's almost all the same, not word for word, but, like, we're all talking about the same piece of citation.
mhm.
So, what is the boundary? What is the ethics? What does our SciComm hater hat say about this? Like,
Right.
as a creator, you're going to think like, "Well, this is freaking shitty because, like, I'm putting work into, like, making this video, and then they're taking it word from word." And, what makes it even worse about, Lab Muffin Lab Muffin's video is the fact that there's one paper specifically that she shows in her video that she, like, green screens herself over, and it was a hard paper to find.
Mhm.
And so this MD creator couldn't find the paper that she's talking about, and it would have been and because she has herself green screened over the paper, she's, like, in the way that he can't, like, screenshot it and use that same graphic for himself, so he found another paper that had a similar graph, but wasn't the actual paper, and then was using that to, like, say the same part, like, to say the same claim. So he's,
Allegedly.
like, using say that again?
Allegedly.
Yeah, exactly, allegedly, from her own digging, this her own perspective, this is not, like, confirmed or we're not, denying, but this is what we're seeing, this is, like, in a highlight in her stories.
Right.
And so, yeah, so she put, like, instead he used a different paper with a similar looking graph, one that the researchers never cited.
Oh boy.
So he's misrepresenting a source and also misrepresenting
Yeah.
what the source is even, like, saying.
I think the big problem that comes in here is, why can't we give credit? What is it about this feeling that this is my content and I came up with it? Like, I would have so much respect for this person if that was the case, for them to say, I saw this like great reporting from Lab Muffin and it inspired me to talk further about it. I would just have so much respect when people start giving credit, name drop other people, lift other people up. Like, why not? It actually would probably help with how I'm perceiving you. Like, she has put so much work, like finding this, drafting this, inspiring other people to create content. Why not? If that's something that you use, like, why not give credit? And I think this is just like such a big problem in our industry where, um, can I say I was on a plane a few weeks ago and I was thinking of this episode and I was listening to this Backstreet Boys song and it's like, am I original? Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I the only one? And I'm like, guy, you will rock the world, all of that. You don't need to be the only one. But I think we have this culture of I'm the only one. I'm the original one. I'm the first one. And you see that, like, one of the things that I hated so much a few years ago, and I sent it to so many of my friends, was this like person on YouTube who did something SciComm and was like, I'm the first one that did in SciComm. And I was like, I know objectively you're not, because I've seen other content and other people doing it in other ways. Like, did you look up all the internet and that's how you know you're the first one and the only one who did that? Did you check with everyone? Did you check it in different languages? Did you
Mhm.
check different keywords and you just found out that you're the only one? But because there's all that focus on it, including content creators, it's like, I made this.
Yeah.
Made this and it's
Yeah.
mine. And yeah, why can't we have humility?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think it's like, we have the culture and science of like publish and perish, but then also even when trying to apply for grants, like say for some NSF grants where they're like, what is the innovation here? Like, what is the new thing that you're doing that you're bringing to the table? But like always having to be the person that's like doing new things and the drive to like be the first to do it or be the new X, Y, and Z or whatever, or be just eventually ends up leading to the fabrication of data, the misinterpretation of, like, how we're doing, like, people cutting corners to do the science, which then adds to, does this paper get properly peer reviewed? Is
Mhm,
it gonna be published in a predatory journal? Are the reviewers doing a good job at, like, reviewing the paper to, like, catch these mistakes? And because reviewers are not even paid to be reviewing these papers anyway, so sometimes, like, things can slip through the
mhm.
cracks, and that's how we get papers that are published, but then later retracted, or, other scientists come forward and be like, "Oh, no, this study wasn't well designed." But it's like,
Right.
"Okay, why did it get published in the first place?"
No, no, I think you're right. Like, it's definitely like a backfire effect. No, not in the backfire effect sense. Like, it backfires when you're like, oh, originality and this and keep publishing, and it takes away the originality because then you're such pressure to do that. And I would say I'm happy that we retract. Like, I have so much respect for a creator, for a writer who retracts their own paper. Like, if I know someone who has like retracted their own paper, I would like give them an absolute standing ovation and be like, good job. I should probably go back and look at like a paper I did like in my bachelor's that got like published. Like, it's like bad. It's not good. It's not wrong. It's just not good study.
Yeah.
Um, so like on one hand, like being like appreciating like retractions and all of that, which is what science is based on, to say I'm wrong, and at the same time not have this pressure that
Mhm.
causes you to become this person that in the first place you don't want to be. Like, you want to be
Mhm.
creative and it makes you uncreative. You want to be um which all of that kind of like is interesting in terms of, I think in academia, one of the currencies that we have is knowledge.
Mhm.
And that and I wish that was more curiosity than knowledge. Because once the currency is knowledge, you can't say I don't know. You can't say I'm wrong. You can't say I haven't created something good. And I think there's a difference between being original and being creative. I think you could replicate a study in very creative ways that is valuable. But I think overall, this emphasis on knowledge causes this like opposite of intellectual humility. What would you call it? There's a name for it. Intellectual
I don't know. Arrogancy?
arrogance, arrogance, intellectual arrogance, right?
Yeah.
Which is so dangerous. But
Yeah.
we talked a little bit about intellectual humility.
Yeah. I think because like the arrogance comes down to being like the need for external validation within our amongst our scientific peers or even like amongst the public of just being like, I'm a credible source. I'm the only one that knows this, so I'm the expert that everyone should like look into and not worship, but just be like, I don't know, you kind of just like your ego just lifts up a little bit of just like,
Mhm.
yeah, I know, you know. But I think you're right in the sense of like it does speak volumes, especially when we practice amongst our own peers of in science communication of just like if we were wrong, then like admitting that goes a lot further, goes a longer way than to just like staying 10 toes down and being like, no, this is exactly what science is. You can't question science. Science is always like legit and factual. Nothing
Mm,
can go wrong. But it's like, yeah, but people do science and people can. People are also very flawed. And that's where like the mistakes happen. Maybe the like the scientific experiment they tested the hypothesis, but we can still be poorly designed because it's still human in the fact, and
correct.
so I'm, like, not discrediting science, and, like, retractions don't like, they happen a lot more, but there's also a sense of stigma that goes into when your paper is retracted of, like, "Oh, like,
Mhm.
am I not a legit like, is that scientist not trustworthy anymore, or can we not
Right.
trust this at all?" When it's just like, no, it's we should be seeing like you're saying, we should be seeing them as like, "Oh, no, they are even more legit because they actually are
Mm,
continuing to look back and reflect on the work that they're doing and correcting it and taking it out if it isn't for that." So, like, why is there a stigma behind a negative stigma behind it, which further perpetuates people just kinda keeping it underground, not admitting
mhm.
to it, and then just, like, adding to the misinformation or, like, adding to sh shitty science.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, because I think we also, like, conflate someone that, like, outright makes up data with someone who's, like, bad methods or mistakes and stuff like that, but a lot of these things. Um, yeah, I we talked a lot about kinda like that idea of intellectual humility and being able to say that I'm wrong. And even, like, I was reading about it, and it said, like, "Oh, yeah, like, if you think about it, are you wrong in most of your conversation with other people? Like, the last conversation you had, like, last discussion." And I'm like, "No, I'm most of the time, I'm right." And, like,
Yeah.
yes, we're part of the data where it's so hard for us to admit that we were right, and I think a big part of it comes from this drive to want to, like, preserve your identity, and be like, "Hey, like I'm a smart person. That's like, that's the currency that I have." And feeling that admitting wrong kind of takes away that identity, but at the same time, I feel if we all had like more intellectual humility, you look at like effects of that in, life and relationships you have with other people. People that have higher intellectual humility are kind of more likely to look at data, question their own decisions. There was like one that said, if they see like a politician changing their mind, they're not like they're gonna judge them less, which is a good thing. Like you want politicians to change their mind based on facts and data and realize they might be wrong. It kind of like just makes you a better person to have intellectual humility. You would look for information that is counter to what you believe. Is like this high science curiosity thing. So why are we not teaching more of that, especially in academia? Why are we not teaching more of that? Why are we not training people to do that? Like as parents, how much like might we all or like aunties like advocate for teaching kids intellectual humility?
Ray sent me a paper, we'll link it in the show notes. Not a paper, but
A report by the Greater Good Science Center is like a white paper on intellectual humility, um, which I thought was a good accumulation of different studies.
yes. And so they have 5 questions that they add for they asked for their questionnaire. So one was like, I question my own opinions, positions, viewpoints because they could be wrong. Second, I reconsider
Let's
my
let me pause on that. How do we feel about that?
I question my own opinions, positions, and viewpoints because they could be wrong. I think okay, so for their 5-point scale, it's like not at all like me or very much like me.
Uh-huh.
I would like to say that it's very much like me because I know that I don't know everything.
Mhm,
And as
right,
someone who, like, gets a lot of my news information from, like, social media, I know that most of the time is usually opinions and, like,
right,
what other people are saying without me actually doing, embarrassingly, like, further work to, like, read on my own and, like, make these decisions on my own. So, I'm always open to hearing what's in my own echo chamber, but then also venturing out to hear, like, okay, what am I missing? What are my own blind spots? And what are some other viewpoints that are not super extreme, but at least so different that I like, "Oh, okay, like, I can understand." So I feel
right.
like I'm intellectually humble in that sense.
Humble. You mo right. I okay, so as you were, like, talking, I'm like, "Oh, I think I have 2 answers." I
Okay.
think I'm intellectually high on intellectual humility. Emotionally, not that high,
Yeah.
cause like, there's, like, so many times in conversations where someone says something and I'm like, "Oh, this is wrong," and, like, "This is not right," or, "I know how to do this," and a lot of that and it takes me that, like, pausing and
Mhm.
thinking and be like, "Do I know that? Or is there data around it?" So I think emotionally, I'm definitely way less intellectually, humble
Mhm.
than I would like to be.
And that's fair, dude, because again, like, it can be super frustrating. Like, man, there's some times where I'd be like because I engage with, like, political content on my Instagram, sometimes it's the first thing that I see, and and sometimes the news can be clickbaity or, like, rage baity,
Mhm.
like or
Right.
something, like, super freaking frustrating, and so I try to read comments thinking one way, but then everyone else is like, "Oh my god," like, it just sends me down a damn spiral that I'm like, how do people think this way?" But also it's just like, well, okay, like, taking myself out of it, it's a bigger system in place that's causing all
Right.
of this to happen. Like, they are also perceiving the same thing about us for not being on the same opinion. So just like,
Yep.
we're all just like little lab rats in this
I
earth.
know.
Okay,
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 moving
next
on back to that.
question. I reconsider my opinions when presented with new evidence. You go first.
I think so. I think okay, again, I think
You want to say that you do.
I wanna say I do, but I think I will have an emotional reaction first to kinda, like, defend
Mhm,
my opinion. It's also, like, changing your mind, like, takes so much, like, emotional and intellectual energy. So I
mhm,
think I will try to preserve by immediately maybe countering the new information and stuff. And it would again take me a little time to ease in and be like, okay, let's hear them out. I guess I might have to change my mind. Um, but I don't know if I will. I hope I will. I know I will give it breathing time. I think reaction, which is like no, maybe, then I'll give it breathing time, and then I might or might not change my mind.
mhm. Okay, there's 3 others that we'll just we won't hound on, but it's just like, I accept my beliefs and attitudes may be wrong. In the face of
Mhm.
conflicting evidence,
Mhm.
I'm open to changing my opinions, and I like
Okay.
finding out new information that differs from what I already think is true.
Okay, tell me about the last one, because I do think the last one is more interesting.
I like finding out new information that differs from what I already think is true. Um, I think as for me personally, I like learning shit, but I like
Mhm.
learning new things. Um, I don't know, I feel like what that is science is that we're always finding out new information. I don't know about
No.
it being differs for what I already think is true, but I think it comes down to knowing or at least for me, I know I'm not that smart. I know I don't know everything, so I think that's why I'm always a little bit more open to just, like, maybe a little too naively of, like, believing a lot of things, but I can see, like, where conspiracy theories come from or, like, where these anti-vax things come from or whatever types of anti kinda sentiment. It really comes down to a place of, like, uncertainty, fear, and just like not really understanding what exactly is happening.
Right.
So it sounds more plausible and we're more susceptible to like accepting that as an opinion. And so I'm
Mhm.
always constantly trying to figure like I'm always learning and reading and hearing to maybe to the point where I'm like kind of stuck. I don't even know what to believe, but at least I'm
Right.
like more open to and susceptible to it.
Right, right. And I think a big part of that is honestly kind of like, like we like when you like gossip, right? It's
Mhm.
like it's like a sense of curiosity and you want to know what's going on. And sometimes some of it is like I don't know if I have all the data and information and I'm curious. But sometimes it depends. There's like a range of information where, like, if it's your opinion about this science thing that is kind of newer, might be wrong. And I might read that because I want to learn more about it. But if I see a big community saying, this is why the sun is not real, I'd be
Mhm.
like, oh, I really want to know that. Some of it is not the intellectual humility of sun not being real, because the sun is real, but the intellectual humility of maybe I misunderstood those people, maybe? Like,
Mhm.
maybe they're seeing something and there's an argument out there that I didn't know existed. So it's not necessarily thinking that a scientific thing is wrong, but the
Mhm.
way we think about something or the way we communicate something, that might be wrong. And I think there's an exciting sort of curiosity in not knowing that and wanting to know more about it.
No, that's a good point because it's like, okay, if I were to find flat earther things, I'm like, the first thing I'm not gonna think of like, "Oh, let me hear what they have to say." But also, like, it's like the papers of, like, a flat earther goes to Antarctica to, like, prove that the Earth is flat, but then proved himself wrong. Like, so I guess the gossip and intellectual yeah, I don't know. I know that person's wrong, and I don't think I'm gonna change my mind on that, but I think I'm interested to know what led them to this point and to
Mhm.
their understanding to have a little bit more to humanize them instead of just seeing
Right.
them as just like dum-dums.
Right. Right. Do you think there is a intellectual humility researcher listening to this podcast and just like dying inside and be like, "This is not what this means. What are you guys
Exactly. We can admit that we're not interpreting this correctly. This is just our interpretation.
talking?" Right, right. And
Okay.
we're going like really above and beyond for this.
Okay, so as we wrap up, like I guess what are our oh man, there's one
Oh,
more thing I wanted
can
to show you.
I have a interesting thought for not an interesting thought. It's something that I've learned from someone. Sonia Pemberton, she makes a lot of documentaries around like controversial topics like vitamins or carbon, vaccination, stuff like that. And one of the things she told me a few years ago, I can't remember if it was for one of her projects or all of her projects, was she asked her team to start getting into filming and writing the story by actually wanting to know what's the answer to this controversial topic. So like I think they all had this like small sticky note, if I can remember correctly, and it said something along the line of like I might be wrong.
Mhm.
And I think for us as science communicators, when we talk about things, a lot of times it's kind of like, oh, this is what I want to talk about, this is what I want to prove. But like, what is the thing that I want to talk about? Like I might be wrong. I might learn something on the way. And I feel like that's a very intellectually humble way of trying to be a science communicator.
Yeah, and I think there's some good communicators out there, even YouTube channels that I watch a lot that practice that in terms of like, "Hey, I don't really like I'm not an expert in this field. I don't really
Mhm.
know much, but let me go find the answer and let me take you with me." And I think they do a lot better than the ones of just the experts of just like, "I know what I'm saying. This is it.
Yep.
That's final." But there is a place for that. There is a place for that, especially if they are the person doing the actual research. There is a place for that. But when it comes to but yeah, like how do you practice humility even in your own research if you are the legit expert in that sense?
Right. Right.
Okay. I think that's a good place to end, but also I want to show you one more thing to get your reaction.
Oh my god, yes, more interactions.
Yeah, recalling it all the way back to like maybe like halfway through our conversation when you mentioned that you would trust the science communicator more if they
Yeah.
credited that person from the beginning when we're talking about lab muffin and like the MD TikToker. It made me think of another situation where, a content creator was I guess, I don't know if stolen from, but at least a copycat from. Okay,
Uh-huh.
let's get your first impressions.
Okay. Showy.
What do you see here, Ray?
Uh, videos, Einstein's grades. Okay, same topic.
Same
Uh,
topic, same thumbnail.
oh no, like even like you can see the finger. So okay, so I see two images, thumbnails for YouTube videos. They have the same name. It's a person on the left holding a piece of paper on the right, both of them, with similar text and like even like kind of similar like colors a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh no, and one of them is 7 months ago, one of them is 5 years ago.
Yeah, the same YouTube title and everything. And so
Hmm.
the woman science communicator was the first to publish this 5 years ago, and then this male YouTuber, published it 7 months.
Oh
And so I
boy.
watched both videos, and it's not it's not clear verbatim. It's not
Mhm.
verbatim, but you can tell that the second creator, the male creator the second creator, like, took inspiration because it's the same topic, they're using the same source material. And he presents the information very much more different than the first content creator, where hers is very much more, you're only seeing her hands, she's, like, walking you through Einstein's grades, but then the second creator just makes it a little bit more YouTube-y, but in
Right.
his caption, he does credit. So he's like, "This video
Okay.
was inspired and informed by another video posted by the channel, Teebs." He
Ah.
uses a channel about physics, math, astronomy, standardized tests, you can check out her channel. But this is like, does everyone read the description?
Right,
Like,
right.
why couldn't he would he lose credibility by saying this in the video where, like, people will recognize this because he's using the same source material to the point that, like, how like, he's not adding anything new, he's just presenting the information differently. So is this considered
Right,
plagiarism? Is this copy? Like, we
right,
take inspiration. It comes back to, like, my conversation in the very beginning of just, like, sometimes there's only so much like, people's introductions can kinda sound similar,
right.
um, and there's only so many ways you can talk about a topic, but, like, where would this fall into?
That's such a good example, Steph, because it's definitely so different. Because I know with thumbnails, so he might have already made the video, right? The video is done, is ready to go. And he's like, oh, this other video about it got like 5 million views. We know how
Mhm.
important thumbnails and titles are
Mhm.
in getting views. So I'm just going to use exactly the same thing.
Mhm.
And because it might have been made, like, like, after the video, the way that they did it is like that, which they could have, like, edited it at the end, like, with the credits at the end, maybe that would be something that could have been said. It's definitely in the hierarchy of my, "Ugh," this is much lower than the first one, where I'm like, "Dude, just say it." It's much lower, but I have complicated feelings about this. I, like, appreciate that it's sad, and I don't know if it was added later, like, I wonder it might have not, it might have been, like, originally there.
Mhm.
I also wonder, like, what if it was, like, added later when people in the comments were like, "Oh, actually, like, this is someone else's."
Mhm.
Um, so context. I wanna I
Yeah.
wanna I wanna know more context.
Yeah, I
I
want,
wanna
like,
know
yeah, the conversation that I had or the original creator had was just like, okay, like, what was his motivation? Like, what was his
Mhm,
motivation? If you're gonna be using the same thumbnail, same title to, like, talk about a similar topic, like, what's the
mhm,
motivation? And it happens a lot on YouTube where people are always, like, copying each other and on content creation. So he
right,
did credit her, but it just, like, yeah, it still gives you, like, an ick feeling of, like, he could have done it an entirely different way. Like, why,
right,
like, the fact that it just kind of, like, unoriginal in that sense and kinda
right.
in my means in that
Okay,
sense.
what is especially, like, also, like, makes me even more mad, this is steroids. Is especially because, like, women there's, like, I think statistically, like, there's fewer women that create content in STEM, so when you have them doing that, like, don't copy their work, and the I don't know, just, like, give them credit, like, uplift them, and then there's also, like, audiences of a lot of, like, these YouTube channels, like, science YouTube channels, it's, like, so male dominated. So, like, I think it would help your male audience to see that you were inspired by a woman, if you would
Mhm,
mention it like more
mhm,
explicitly, or
mhm,
the other guy like would mention it more explicitly. Like
mhm, mhm.
we like there's I was like reading a paper, it was from a few years ago, but even channels like like Physics Girl, It's Okay to Be Smart and stuff, like all of them are like around like 75-80% like male viewers. So as a male presenter, like what is your responsibility to kind of bring in, you know, your audience into more diverse world of people?
Yeah, yeah.
Rant
I
over.
know. We can go down another rabbit hole in that sense in terms of, like, how women get screwed over. And, this like, well, who's the oh, this is so bad. I don't know the woman that, like, actually did the X-ray crystallography of DNA, but then her male colleague.
Ryder Franklin with
Yeah,
Craig, and oh my god, yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
And, like, even with, like,
What?
the well-knowns of, like, Marie Curie and all
Yeah.
that, like, there's another conversation we can have there. Um, but, we're already pretty long in this conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll wrap it up, but I don't know. This was fun. Thank you for this intellectual, humble conversation, right?
What if we can I add this tiniest little piece of
Yeah.
study that I found that I love?
Yeah.
I was reading about, like, women, like, should not brag about, like, their credits and stuff, because I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, I'm just saying the study was saying because it makes people perceive women as, like, less warm. And then, like, I was looking into, like, solutions and stuff, and one of the things that it was saying is, like, do not humble brag, because people think if they humble brag, it's like, "Oh, I'm just so tired all the time because of, like, all the different work that has been given to me because 'cause I'm so smart." So it's like, don't do it, don't humble brag, it's gonna backfire and everything. Um, so I wonder, like us talking about intellectual humility and trying to rate ourselves in that, like, is that any form of like humble bragging? It's like we don't know, but it's because we're so humble.
That's also interesting. Again, we can go into, like, another rabbit hole because it's
Uh-huh.
like politeness politics of just, like, women having to always be perceived as just like, "Oh, oh, I'm so demure. I'm so like, it could never be me." But then, like, but men are the ones that can just take our ideas, claim them for themselves, post without any, like, repercussions, no slap on the wrist, and then they're the ones that are being, get to say that they were the first to do this when it's just like we have to go out of our way to think more of like, "Oh, how are we gonna be perceived? How my credibility is going to be affected by, being transparent or by saying that I didn't know." Like, does that like, I feel like at least gender-wise and even like race and ethnicity-wise, like that plays such a bigger role that sometimes these papers don't really go into because it's just more, does it play yeah, I don't know, because it doesn't really go into like the culture politics
Right.
that of yeah, just the culture and the politics of like how we move about as humans. There's only can
Mhm.
after so much.
And with that, we will humbly and intellectually finish this podcast. Someone is like, delete, delete.
Yeah, exactly. Like, thank you so much for humbling me, Ray.
I know you humbled me. Thank you.
But yeah, thank you, friends, for listening to another podcast. We did get another submission. And so I think, please keep sending your submissions. Visit us at SciCommHotline.com or email us at drama@SciCommHotline.com. Yeah, this has been fun and looking forward to what we're going to gossip about next.
Bye.
Bye.